local commerce. Having all these fast food restaurants come in that are tied to overseas larger sister companies as a franchise doesn't benefit the local vendor here that wants to sell their fish and chips.
They're drums that are made out of metal, and they've got a divot in the middle.
Excuse me, politicians are politicians.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. They're kind of the same. They're kind of the same everywhere, aren't they?
Even though a lot of us are successful in the arts and in sports, there are many parents that are not supportive.
Welcome to another episode of the Orbital Media Podcast, where we learn about human perspective, culture, and story, one interview at a time. If you aren't subscribed yet, please consider doing so that we can continue to make more content in the future. Today, we're going to be talking about Barbados and Barbadian culture, as well as what it means to be from the Caribbean in a broader sense. Today, I'm joined by Darren Watson. Darren, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
It's nice to have you, Chris, and it's good to be on the podcast. I am in media. My entire career background, I want to start with career because I don't define myself by my career. But my career background has been in marketing, sales, and in media. I MC some of the national events here, and I do television presenting the Barbados Lottery. A big part of me, where I get my fulfillment, is in community work. I would have worked with a program for 12 years, and I still do a lot of community work with the Barbados Boxing Association.
I do want to talk about Barbados as a country. So for people who are tuning in, watching, listening, and they maybe haven't heard of Barbados, what would you sort of tell someone who's maybe not heard of Barbados, or they've heard the name but they don't really know anything else about the country?
In my experience traveling, I've been to one large city before, and that was New York. And I would hear experiences from other people too, and then join with my own experience. When you tell someone you're from Barbados, they're like, "Oh, that's in Jamaica," right? Because I guess
interesting. Okay, yeah.
Because the Caribbean accent sounds similar to the other Caribbean islands. To us, some of the European accents sound very similar to where Europeans can identify which accent is from which country, like within ease. We can do it here in the Caribbean. So we're appalled when people can't tell that we're not from Jamaica because we think Jamaican accent is very unique and very identifiable. But we're the smallest, not the smallest, but we are a small Caribbean island. Just outside the Caribbean chain, if you look at the Caribbean Sea, it kind of forms a nice, beautiful pattern, a nice chain of islands, and we're just on the outside, the most easterly Caribbean island. When you think of the powerhouses in the Caribbean, we think of Jamaica, we think of Trinidad, we think of Guyana, and then we think of Barbados. And that's apparent when it comes to economies, where it comes to human resources, sports. Those are usually the islands that are the powerhouses in the Caribbean.
The big ones, yeah.
We call ourselves a lot of names. There's Barbadian, Bajan, and then for Barbados, we say Barbados, Bimbados, B-I-N. Barbados is mine. Barbados, 246.
What is 246?
That's our area code.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you're in the Caribbean, so I'm assuming weather is pretty much like tropical paradise, but is that a fair assessment? Or
you would figure living in a certain climate, well, after so many years, you get used to it. And, you may get bored, you may get mundane, but, oh, man, I don't think I'll ever give up this tropical weather for anything. I had the cold weather experience, and, it was... you can warm up, I guess, but nothing beats being able to go to the beach in less than a 30-minute drive. Anywhere on the island, you can get to a beach in less than 30 minutes. Our weather is either wet or dry. That's it.
And is that by season as well? Like summer's wet or dry, and then or is it just like any kind of time of the year? It might be. You might have like
winter's wet, dry. But in the summer coincides with our hurricane season. That's between July and November. Our hurricane season. That's when you will get majority of our rainfalls for the year. But otherwise, it's either rain or sunshine in Barbados, and that helps us a lot with our agriculture. which is also seasonal, but based on the rain, not based on the temperatures or the climate, I would say.
Right. And the temperature, I'd imagine it must not change all that much. It's just, it's kind of hot and it can go from maybe a little too hot to like just right, very nice.
Yes, sometimes it's extremely humid, but not as humid as some other countries. I'll say moderate, right? It's just a little hotter than it would be in the winter time. But there isn't a big fluctuation in temperatures at all.
Yeah. And what about demographics? Like who lives there? You know, do you have a sense of like the general population? I mean, my understanding was it's just a couple 100,000 people. It's not like an island with like millions of people living on it. Is that? I hope I'm correct on that.
Yeah, it's around 300,000. But we don't have our census doesn't occur as often as some would like, but it's around 300,000. The our ministers have been pushing for us to get more children, to get more babies, because the birth rate is pretty close to our death rate. So right now, the majority of the populace is closer to retirement age, and we
Okay.
live long. We live long, so that's good. Um, it must be the weather and the good.
That actually gets to my next question. That's very interesting because that's the similar demographics to a lot more and more countries in the world now. People are living longer, they're having better lives. People aren't really having kids, and populations are getting older. More people are retiring. That also one of the couple things I know about Barbados is that it would be like an upper middle income country in terms of per capita income and general development on the island, and certainly compared to some other Caribbean islands. My sense is the island's like reasonably well run. In certainly compared to some of its neighbors. I don't know so much about Trinidad, but do you want to speak on that at all?
Speaking about how it's run, I can speak about the demographic and the income levels that you just mentioned just now.
Okay, sure.
The are next to tourism, and at one point would have been the cane industry. The human resources is one of our biggest industries in Barbados. There's a saying we have here: anywhere you go in the world, you will meet a Bajan. So
Hmm.
we do a lot of self development, career development, and then we fly out, we have our experiences, and then we get a lot of returning nationals coming back here to retire, relax in their later stages of their lives. But as of recently, the lower income population has been growing tremendously,
Okay.
and because of that, it looks like a larger gap,
Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay.
right? Because the lower population, they're the ones who are having a lot of children, compared to the more academically inclined or the professionals. Professionals here are usually having like one, none, or two. So because that part of the populace has been increasing, the wealth gap looks like it's a big disparity.
That sounds. Yeah. I mean, it does seem to be a problem again in a lot of other middle and upper income countries where there is still like, yeah, the economy might still be growing and you might have a on paper it says like people are getting richer, but more and more people are actually struggling, and you have a smaller pool of people who are doing like very well, and a lot of other people who are sort of either left behind or kind of barely treading water. So
Well,
that's
what I can
it's
tell you though that may be useful as an indicator is the Barbados passport is the most recognized passport in the Caribbean. A
okay.
lot of we have the U.S. embassy here, and some of the other countries, they have to come here to apply for their visas. So our international relationships are very strong.
hmm Yeah, that's another. I don't know if you want to get into sort of history at all and talk about that, but one of the other couple things I know about Barbados is historically it was a British territory. It got independence. It was part of the Commonwealth, and then very recently the government voted, or the population voted to leave the Commonwealth and officially become a republic, sort of in all senses of the word. And I'm curious, sort of what whether it's again just regular people or a sense of like what they think of when it comes to like the UK and the US and like other Caribbean islands? Like, what are those kind of kind of relationships like?
I believe that the change to republic, that's a process. There was no immediate change in the way that we were
Oh, okay,
governed.
got it.
We all,
Okay,
so I believe that's a process. I think the first step may have been the psychological change to now look at ourselves as fully independent, as now a republic. Yeah, we have broken. You spoke about the relationship with Commonwealth, but there are a lot of Caribbean islands, including Barbados, that are still pushing for CARICOM, which is the group of the Caribbean islands coming together to have a stronger voice. Right? Our Prime Minister, she is declaring July 31st as a one-off bank holiday to acknowledge the 50th anniversary of CARICOM.
and is that for just which we'll talk about in a second, just the English speaking Caribbean islands, or is that going to include, like the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and I mean, I don't know about Cuba given their government, but it, I don't know much about that the organization, but it makes sense to create like a Caribbean community with more kind of integration between the different countries.
But Cuba is not part of CARICOM, but the relationship between the history of Cuba and the Caribbean is one of endearment. The time that Cuba has forsaken us, or Cuba has never been a part of our developmental plans. We actually reached out to them at one point for healthcare services, to use some of their doctors, and to use some of their guidance on healthcare. So, and some of our students also go there to study. So they're not part of CARICOM, but we have a great relationship with Cuba.
So this is I would fair to say it's a lot of the kind of English speaking
Yes.
ex-British,
Yeah.
yeah, the sort of like Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, Antigua, Bahamas, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah. What was the national language, the native language of Belize again?
Belize, Belize is English too. Yeah, Belize is I don't know a ton about Belize, and you mentioned Guyana at the beginning, but my sense is that, and as you would know way better than me, so I'm curious about this. Belize and Guyana, the little I've read, is they're culturally almost considered more part of the Caribbean than they are like
So,
mainland South America, because they're English speaking as well, and they're ex-British colonial.
okay. Yeah. Well,
and
Belize.
and in some cases they have similar demography.
So that may be the only foreign language country that's coming to mind would be Dominican Republic.
What are some of the relationships like between Barbadians and people or Bajans, I should say? Do you prefer Bajan or Barbadian?
It doesn't matter, Barbadian, Bajan.
Okay, all right, okay. Also Barbadians. Yeah, like what are some of the relationships like with your fellow islanders or people on the mainland?
There. All right. Let me see. I believe it may have been changed. I think it's changing. It's changing for the better right now. The Similarly to how there's a jest about how America treats Mexicans.
Yeah.
That used to exist between Barbadians and Guyanese.
Who would be the equivalent of the Americans there, and who'd be the version of the Mexicans?
Well, a lot of Barbadians, some Barbadians, I want to say a lot, but there were a group of Barbadians that used to look down on Guyanese, and they would say very very low things about them. The best Guyanese is a dead one, and it was never something that I bought into. I never liked it because that's anti CARICOM, and I'm very pro CARICOM. But what I can say is that throughout the years, I'm hearing and seeing less of that. So I don't know if it's a pride thing that's not gone, an ego thing that's not gone. So that's coming from a Barbadian perspective looking out. And then the other islands, the other powerhouses like Trinidad and Jamaica, we just looked at them more as like the competition for sports, right? And the competition for like who will have the better economy.
Yeah.
But it's a great relationship we have with our sister islands. We've been crying about it for the longest time. I don't know whenever we'll get affordable airfare um, to visit our sister island. But I know that when that does happen, oh man, the bond will be even closer because it is very close as it is right now. but I really look forward to that day. The music of our festival is another thing that helps hold us together. So we got soul community.
Let's talk about music. Yeah, let's talk about music. So the one thing I would say that as a person from outside of Barbados that I would know is that Rihanna is from Barbados.
Yeah,
She's like the celebrity that people would know she's from Barbados. Um,
megastar,
right,
megastar.
like
Right.
global superstar. Other than Rihanna, um, about other than sort of traditional kind of music in the Caribbean with the and again, don't know if this is Barbados, but like the metal drums, right? With the this is God, I'm on the spot right here. They're drums that are made out of metal and they've got a divot in the middle, and
Steel
when you
pan.
hit them, yes, and it has like it's the classic like Caribbean sound. Yes, yep, that's the one.
Yeah, the steel pan orchestras. Yeah.
Right. I don't know all that much about music in Barbados or in the Caribbean. If you want to talk about that,
Yeah, but the steel pan is a Caribbean thing. That's not. I, I think that came from Trinidad. Yeah, that's more Trinidadian, but we endorse it here. But it's not correct. It could be two Trinidad, Barbados. It's a Caribbean thing, and we have steel pan festival here. Um, we don't need lyrics to be able to dance and pick a groove, right? But that's another thing that joins us together. The steel pan. There's soca music, kaiso, calypso, and we have our soca competitions. Then there's bashment soca, and then there's road march, and the other islands like Grenada, they have jab jab. St. Lucia, they have their competitions as well, and we love listening to the music from the other islands. And the artists love to do collaborations. So you will hear a collaboration between Bungie. You may hear lyric with a Machel Montana. You know,
nice. And do you the styles of music? I'm curious to like listen to it more, and we can't obviously like talk about music on a podcast where people. I mean, unless I play like music underneath it, and it's gonna be royalty free, so people can get a sense of what it sounds like. But are there also sort of modern types of music that have also become extremely popular in terms of like what people like to listen to, but also produce?
Mhm. Well, if you go to modern, before we go to modern, we talking music. I have to pay homage to Red Plastic Bike, Mighty Gabby, Matt Fingal, Square One, Crossfire, Alison Hines. What has really has the pull now is like bashment soca. There's an artist, Father Phyllis. He's kind of made a lot of penetration on the international stage on like TikToks, Instagram. I even saw a video with the twin, Tia Mori, the twin Tia and Tamara.
Maybe I'm not familiar, unfortunately. I live under a rock when it comes to some of my music tastes, but
There were, but they still are actresses. And I saw a Vine with them dancing to one of Father Phyllis's songs. That's Bashment Soca. Father Phyllis was. I can tell you exactly which one.
either way, what I can do is we can also I can put links in the video and I'll try to find these songs. I want to listen to them and then put links down so people can find them
Look for
and listen
Father.
to.
You gotta look for Father Phyllis. There are two. Is Boxy Brawling. Boxy Brawling is one, and Sweet Girl. When you meet you at a picnic, fit, skin smooth, ass tit tit. They want to say the lyrics, so try not to say lyrics, right? But
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
all right, but it's a vibe. So Bashment Soca kind of took by storm, and there was a lot of pushback from the older folk with Bashment Soca because they look at Kaiso and look at social commentary, and they figure a Bashment Soca will come and kind of push out those other art forms of music. But no, you don't see that pushback as more. You see a lot more acceptance from the older crowd for Bashment Soca, and it's proven that it didn't die. It didn't kill the other art forms. We still have our social commentary tents that are well attended, and our social commentary competitions that still get a decent prize money from it.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's actually a kind of a point with me when it comes to art. There are lots of different types I like, but I like the options and not just one single type of music kind of becoming just so dominant in a place where it's like the only thing you can listen to, because it is just such a wide range of things humans can make with musical sound. And being able to listen to just lots and lots of different things, I think is really cool. And it's one of the things that I love so much about music, even though it's never been a field I knew I was ever going into. But I just love to listen to it like all the time. So it's good to hear that, yeah, you still have the different styles alive, and it's not just like we all listen to this one thing now.
I mean, here you will find your soca junkies that even out of soca season. Soca season is tied with our crop over season, which is when the sugarcane crop ends. Crop over is a festival, like giving praise to God for the crop that He's given us. We wear costumes, we have our soca competitions, dance, so usually that's the season for our soca music to come out. When a lot of people visit the island to jump in bands and enjoy the fets, enjoy the music. And then there's soca junkies that will listen to soca any time of the day, any month of the year. But other than that, we're just like anyone else. We like all the other genres of music: hip hop, alternative,
Yeah,
neo
yeah.
soul.
It's just good to have just a wide variety. And the more I've
Yeah,
listened to different kinds of music, the more I've really enjoyed it, actually, and not just being like I'm only going to listen to In the U.S., it was a lot of like classic rock, which again was fantastic stuff. But I love listening to lots of different things from around the world. I've gotten very big into like different areas of the world's folk music, and just because it's like totally different from what you'll hear in just your daily life. But actually, on that point, when you're mentioning festivals, and sort of art and what kind of people do for fun, either just in like a regular weekend, or if it's like a big event, like the big events on the island that are just like they draw everyone together. And I'd imagine, again, in a country that's you don't have like millions of people, there is maybe more of a sense of like community, of like we're the people on this island, this thing's happening, everybody's going to it.
oh, Q in the community. That started and never ended. I heard someone say that Q in the community has probably surpassed our annual crop over celebrations.
What is Q in the community?
Okay, so there's a radio station, Streamline Radio, that is QFM. So they go into different communities. It helps mobilize the community, and it helps bring a lot of traction to some of the local bars in the community, or some of the food vendors. Bring some activity to that community, because a lot of our business and industry is really around one parish, either St. Michael or Christchurch. So Q really helps to mobilize the locals to go into the country and experience something. The bars out there can get some patronage from whoever is visiting. And in the Q&A community, you have like dancing, a lot of socializing, drinking, of course, because we like rum in the Caribbean, and karaoke. So Q is on
Nice karaoke. Who doesn't love karaoke?
and karaoke, right?
Karaoke is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So Q's on Thursdays, and on Saturday it's when the video footage from Q is aired on our Streamline television, CBC TV8. So even if you didn't get to go to Q in person, you can still sit at home and enjoy it on television on Saturdays. And the karaoke is always a blast to watch. It's a karaoke competition. So people will sing, and then who wins, they get a prize for it. But Q is a vibe, man. So Q for sure. Oystins. Every year we have the Oystins Fish Festival. That's well attended, and it's been revamped as of recent. But even outside of the fish festival, on Fridays, Oystins is like a go-to spot. You can, if there's nothing else going on in Barbados, you can guarantee that there's a crowd in Oystins, and you have a good time.
Okay. And what is that? I'm just clear. You said a coat. What's it called again?
Oystins, Oistin, which is the name of the fishing village.
And actually, on that, and I'm assuming there's just like you can hang out on the beach a lot. There's a fair amount of hanging out on beaches.
Well, you know, in case anywhere you go, you have to be cautious because not all the beaches are well lit for safety reasons. So just hang out a random beach unless you're going with a large crowd. You want to hang out a random beach for an intimate setting. That's not the preferred option. It's and that's not saying that here's a dangerous place, but danger is exists everywhere. You have to be cautious. Other than that, Barbados is generally safe. Generally safe. So people do hang out at beaches, more so the well lit beaches or the well attended beaches. So Oistins is a beach that they will have people there, so you can go hang out at Oistins Beach on a Friday night still. You'll be good. St. Lawrence Gap is very active. They have a beach there, and Brandon's Beach is active during the day, very active during the day. Most beaches during the day is a good to go.
It's more, yeah. So it sounds like it's beach is more sort of something you do during the day. I mean, I figure anywhere in the world, right? People generally are going to go to the beaches more during the day, not so much at night. But yeah. And also you mentioned the fish festival. I want to talk about food for a little bit, which is a topic that I care quite a lot about, and it sounds like you do as well. Do you want to talk about food in Barbados?
Our national dish is cou-cou and flying fish, but the nutrition of Barbadians has changed so drastically over the years. Flying fish used to be plentiful in season, and now it's gotten very expensive, and that may be one of the reasons why people drifted away from certain traditional dishes. Um, Flying fish has gotten expensive, ground provisions. Sometimes when they're in season, they can be affordable. Still get sweet potato around $1 a pound at certain plantations when in season. But like the premium ground provisions like yam, we import some of our ground provisions like Edos. We import plantain, and we get some of them from our sister island, St. Vincent, mainly. Through the years, because things have gotten so expensive and less available, our diet changed. So we actually eat a lot of fast food here. Someone
Oh, okay,
suggests
interesting.
the national dish of Barbados should be macaroni pie because a lot of people eat pie more so than cocoa and flying fish. You wouldn't find many people in my generation, our generation, stirring a pot of cocoa anymore. That isn't really prevalent as one time. But we too we love to eat, man. We love Bajan seasoning. We do our seasoning with chives, garlic, onions, scotch bonnet pepper, and that's just the base, right? So we put seasoning in all our meats. Put seasoning in our chicken, our fish, and we lay our seasoning down to the bone. Like you want to bite that chicken, you see seasoning dropping off the bone. Although we like our fast food, I don't want to say our fast food because we don't own it. Right? We don't own fast food. But even though
Uh,
a lot of us like fast food,
the fast food, yeah.
yeah, I guess it's more of an addiction thing. It's more an addiction
Hmm.
thing because we still have a great appreciation for a local fried chicken.
Yeah,
When you go to like
yeah.
Freddy's and you get their fried chicken, or you go to Eddie's and you get his pork ribs and it's well seasoned, or you go to the shop in Highgate Hall, the local bars, and you order a fried chicken or a fried pork. You know what I mean? There's nothing like it. So we have a great appreciation for things that are done locally, even though we our diet has changed a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the fact that it's like stuff like macaroni, macaroni salad. It reminds me a little bit of, not that I've spent a lot of time in Hawaii. Sorry,
We call it macaroni pie.
macaroni pie. Okay, is it reminds me a little bit of what I know about food in like Hawaii, for example, and a couple other Pacific islands, where as trade and the ability to move different kinds of food around the world's gotten easier, some types of sort of like very easy to consume mass produced fast food have become like very popular on certain other islands. So you'll see basically the equivalent of that in like in Hawaiian food now, where that's just like, no, that's a and like spam. It's like a huge thing apparently in Hawaii, but it's that same thing of just, it was like a mass processed thing that they could import in the island. It would stay good for a really long time, and then people just got like kind of obsessed with it, and they were just like throwing spam on everything. Not that I've talked to anyone on the show yet from Hawaii, but my impression is that the Hawaiians, they love their spam a lot.
My preference is for us to have a bit more control of how many fast food restaurants there are and how many fast food restaurants are allowed to come into Barbados, similar to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands. Like they control that. There are only so many fast food restaurants are allowed in, and it's not so much in the interest of the health of the locals, even though it can still assist the help the health in a positive way. It can, because people can still eat unhealthy, even though it may not be fast food,
Sure,
for
sure,
sure.
absolutely, yeah,
But where it comes to commerce, local commerce, having all these fast food restaurants come in that are tied to overseas larger sister companies as a franchise doesn't benefit the local vendor here that wants to sell their fish and chips or their chicken and chips, right? So that's something I would prefer if we had more control over it. But it doesn't. You can drive. It takes 30 minutes to get to a beach anywhere in Barbados. It takes 10 minutes to get to a fast food restaurant anywhere in Barbados, right? And we're too small. We're too small for that. It's not a preference of mine.
yeah. No, it reminds me a little bit. There's a never been. I didn't even know that this island existed, but this island in the Pacific called Nauru that is like it's an independent country. It is a tiny island. There's like 10,000 people that live on it,
Hmm.
and they made all this money because they had it was like a deposit, like a mineral deposit. And back in the maybe it was like 80s or 90s, they started importing all of this fast food, and the population of the island got completely addicted to it to the point where it was just like a health epidemic for everyone on the island because all they were eating all day long was just like giant buckets of fast food. And it became like just like a national emergency because, as you said, like the island was so small, and I think Nauru is like a tiny little island, like it's smaller than Barbados. And you could literally just walk anywhere. You're like, I'm gonna walk 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, there's a fast food place. I'm just gonna drink like as much Coke as I possibly can. And it was like a massive problem, and it kind of wrecked the population's like health. It like everyone basically. Um, and so no, I mean I completely agree. It's like having some of it's fine, but having it just on every corner, and that's I mean as you know like that's a huge stereotype that is very true about the U.S.
Yeah.
as a major problem with its people, the diet of its population for exactly that reason. It's cheap, it's so plentiful, and it's everywhere. And you don't have to do any work to get it other than just like, okay, here's money, give me my food
Yeah.
now.
And then it's a combination of things: the addiction to the fast food, the availability of food locally, the price of it. Because we're developing and there are a lot of infrastructures going on, either corporate or residential. So we at one time I remember we would have guava season and there would be the guava patch. We were going to visit the guava patch. There would be cashew season, fat pork season, and it was a thing. You would go on the East Coast and there would be like numerous families down there just walking, picking cashews and picking fat pork, and you hardly see that now. It's hardly a thing. And in addition to the availability, because the diets have changed, the fruit trees that are still there, you're now seeing ripe fruit drop to the ground.
Mm,
Where before
nobody's picking
you
it.
would
Yeah.
walk in the fruit and it would be hardly ripe, and you tell yourself, "I'm going to pick that tomorrow." And before you could pick that tomorrow, when you get it tomorrow, it's gone because someone
Mm-hmm.
else picked it. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
think the young ones in the community climbed the tree and picked it, but you don't
Yeah.
you don't see that activity anymore. You don't see that kind of nutrition anymore. So it's I guess it's just the way that we've developed, and I just have to accept it. I may be a romantic and wanting a more idealistic life or holding on to the past traditions, but this is just who we are right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's being idealistic. I think that in a lot of ways, again, the U.S. as a country, because for better or worse, it was the place that invented a lot of this fast food culture. I mean, it's quintessentially a very I tend to think of like both good but also not so good aspects of American kind of cultural spread as all this stuff goes to the places. but it tremendously affects the people in the US as well, and it's become a major concern for certain populations of people, and that I think it's sparked in some ways the kind of pushback with like a bit of a health craze in certain areas of the country where people then get like obsessed with health, and they're like, we're only going to eat certain kinds of diets, and like we're not ever going to touch soda, and we're not ever going to touch fast food, and then usually that food, it's like very expensive, and it's often imported from like different places. Then that creates another complicated thing, because then there's also a socioeconomic component, which is like, well, the only people who are now eating this nice, healthy, good for you food are all like the rich people. But if you're just like trying to slog through a 9 to 5, you kind of can only have fast food because that's what's affordable. And I wonder if, that will, as you're talking about, like if that concern is going to then go through into Barbados, and there it's going to be that same question of like, well, can we bring in healthier alternatives? Can we go back to certain basics and a bit more sustainability? And in right, like we have fruit here, we can just eat that fruit. We don't need to take this alternative that's going to make us unhealthy. So, if you're feeling that way, I'm sure there are other people on the island who are feeling that way too.
I don't doubt it. But it's hard to say no to a piece of chicken that's already done, fries that are already done for just 12 Barbados dollars. Like it's hard to say no to that, especially when you're busy, you're working so many hours, you're on the go. You may not have the skill set to cook for yourself. You may not have the facilities to cook for yourself either. Hard to say no to it.
It is hard. And cooking takes a while. I love to cook. I try to cook as much as I can, but it takes up time in my day to just prepare things. And I live alone, and so I'll be, and then clean up and all of that kind of stuff.
And
It's involved.
Tastes like fast food. It never tastes like fast food.
No, it doesn't taste like fast food. I want to actually talk a little bit about the work that you do, because you're in radio, but I don't know if you have the option to like start talking about this stuff, given the fact that you have my impression is a pretty serious platform in your country.
I've applied for radio before. I've done radio training, but I don't work in radio. I once aspired. I remember being a youngster, man, and like sitting at night. I would sit at night when the Mellow Moods used to start. That was the name of a radio segment. It would start at 6 o'clock. And some days throughout the night from 6 to 12, I'll be just there locked on in front of the radio. I was in love with the radio. It's funny I said love, because my favorite station was Love 104.1 FM. And every time the stinger played, I would repeat it after the guy. Love 104.1 FM. Right?
Yep, they've all got the radio voice. Yep.
All got the radio voice. And I was like, all right, when I get older, I have to work on radio. But even though a lot of us are successful in the arts and in sports, there are many parents that are not supportive. So my mother wasn't supportive of that. She always looked at the arts as like a hobby. You can do that later. So I put it back until my late 20s. But I started through the Paris Independence Committee program, right? Spirit of the Nation program. And that was a great avenue for me to, we did community work that I love. And I was able to start public speaking. I had radio interviews. I had training with Dale Ford. And I got some opportunities to start emceeing. So emceeing was where my media career started. I started to get the higher events, the better events, the larger events, more recognized events. But then that fell off because I wasn't in it for the money. So I stepped away from the MCing. And then for some years I was kind of like just docile, and now I'm back again. I'm doing the I'm doing the television presenting with the Barbados Lotteries and some ads for some companies, some small businesses. And I like to develop on that and grow to that. But locally, there isn't a great appreciation for it still, even though we produce some really good entertainers.
So that's kind of I'm curious to hear about, which is like when you're growing up as a kid and you're in school, what are sort of the career paths that people are saying these are the good career paths to go to. These are the career paths that like you don't want. These are the things like with the arts, and it seems to be this is the case in so many countries, right? The arts is like if you make it, great, but nobody's telling you, oh, you should do that. Again, our mutual friend, she was, in medicine, right? She's a doctor. What are the sort of routes that are encouraged, in school?
Our schools did an excellent job exposing us to a myriad of skills, but both academically and in the arts. So there was never a time that I felt like there was a bias toward a particular occupation or a profession, right? If you go to music class, the music teacher is extremely passionate about music. You go to art class, she's extremely passionate about art. You go to an accounting class, and the principal was very unbiased too. Whatever you want to do, you do you. Where the influence came was from our parenting. Many of our parents saw the arts as like a hobby, so they'll try to filter us into like more the accounting line of things, into finance, medicine, or engineer.
Yeah, yeah. The standard kind of yes, this will be a good, well-paying job, and yeah.
Yeah, but in school, yeah, man. In school, it was if it was let's say music, the schools would invite some of the local entertainers to come in and speak about how they got to where they were. To interact with the kids, let them know it's possible you can get here too. We had I don't really say career days as in like formal career days, but every now and again you will see a professional come in to speak about their profession and really push it. So there was never a bias in school, but the bias definitely came from the parenting end of things.
The parenting, and did you feel that was true of a lot of your friends as well? That it wasn't just like, oh, my parents didn't want me to do arts, but like the sense you had, when you hung out with the other, the other boys, like that their parents were kind of doing the same thing. They're like, no, medicine, engineering, that kind of stuff.
There's some parents that are open-minded,
Okay.
and then
So it's
there are
okay. So
parents,
it's like anyway, yeah.
yeah, and then there are parents that would have been in that field. So if you had a parent that was in entertainment, then they understand and
Of
they're
course,
open.
sure, yeah.
But other than that, I feel like majority had parents similar to mine, but that may be because of where I grew up. Just being surrounded by similar people.
Yeah, yeah. It does seem to sort of depend on a country or a culture. In some environments, right? It's really just your parents as people. What do they think? In other places, like the whole culture is almost out against like the concept of don't go into the arts. It sort of
Well,
it does.
I can't say that. I wouldn't
Oh, I don't
down
mean for I
that
don't mean for
terribly.
Barbados. I mean other countries in the world. Like there are other cultures in like on planet Earth, like in other areas where like the general town is gonna say like, yeah, don't go into the arts, and that's just viewed as like a standard, like everyone agrees on that kind of thing. And but in other
I will
cultures,
say
right?
that
It's like depends on the person. Yeah.
Barbados does, vocally at least, they do push the arts. Their grants for people who are in the arts, scholarships, people inside the arts. There's Sheena Rose, a visual artist. She's doing very well with her travels, and she's embraced a lot by our prime minister in the work that she's doing. So Barbados itself, I wouldn't damn them to say that we are not a culture that is supportive of the arts. In fact, I believe we're a culture that was built on the arts. A lot of these soca tents, a lot of politicians would have been in soca tents before, either as entertainers or probably just working on and assisting. But these subcultures that exist in Barbados, and it could be coming from a place of fear, probably not seeing it as viable because it saw some people fail, that didn't get through. It could be coming from a place of fear. So I wouldn't say it's our culture holistically, but we do have a lot of subcultures that exist that look at the arts as just a hobby.
Also, to go off of that a little bit, the dynamic in families, like, was there, I don't know, aside from like people are people, families are families, right? But was there anything, I don't know, particular of note that you, I don't want to talk about with like gender roles, men and women, families, that kind of stuff? Or like anything that stands out, or is it just like, yeah, standard human family stuff?
Once again, I wouldn't, because I do have some friends that came from a two-parent household. Not just a two-parent household, but a healthy two-parent household.
Yes. Yeah, that's always the
Um,
key. A healthy two-parent household,
a
not
healthy
because
two-parent household.
there are plenty that are not. Yeah.
I can't think of any right now that came from a single-parent household that was ran by the father, by male. I don't think there are many, right? That isn't the case. But majority of the times, it will be a single-parent household ran by the mother, and it will be a matriarchal setting. So you will have your grandmother, your aunts are there, and your mother is there. Dad usually isn't there, but I can only give from my perspective, coming up from where I grew up, because I grew up in Woodburn at first in the earlier years of my life. Um, the more impressionable years up to about age 8, and that would be with my aunt and uncle, which is like a two parent household, right? And then I moved to Wildy, Pine and Wildy, with my mother and my two sisters. My father wasn't there, and that was a whole adjustment for me. Like, I came from this like this well structured family to one that is completely different dynamic, and it wasn't. I think it would have been harder for me if it was just me in that community, but that was the case for all the other guys that I used to run around with, and is the case for a lot of the children that I meet in the community programs that we host. So I'm still seeing it around me, but it could be because I'm submersed in it and I grew up in it. Uh, but yeah, it's usually mom. Dad isn't there, and that's like become actually pretty numb to it. Um, it just is what it is, and it's okay. I don't want to say it's okay, but I don't think many people have a cry out about it.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly the case in the U.S. that that's increasing, right? That single parentage is going up more and more and more. And to the point you opened with at the beginning, which if you want to talk more about the community work that you're doing, with boys in the community to give them a good role model. Yeah, I'd love to obviously hear about that, where we can go in a different direction. But because it does seem that like if you have a single parent household, you do still need you really need positive role models from people of, especially if you're a boy, like of men growing up to develop well as a person, especially through those like adolescent years.
I want to touch you a little bit because here, race wise here, um, it's a lot of blacks, right? We don't have
Hmm.
a lot of Caucasians.
Sure.
But over in America, I guess is a bigger mix. So when you say that you're seeing an increase in single parent households, is that like particular to a race, or is that like
It's
across the
actually
board?
so it's really interesting you bring that up. So to try to address this in like as neutral a way as possible, which is the US, and you want to talk about racial groups, right, is so hard. It's a really, really tough topic in the US, and it has been forever, basically. So historically, the trend had always been that Black American communities had much higher rates of single parent households, and this had resulted in a lot of negative outcomes. And we're talking like late 20th century. And there's more information actually that's been coming out in the last several years about that actually for both Black and white families up through the 1950s, you had very, very stable two-parent households essentially in both communities. And that is but then that started to kind of fall apart through the 1960s into the early 2000s. And it hit first the Black American community the worst. But increasingly in the last like 5 to 10 years, those numbers have also been ticking up in the white community as well, to the point where single parentage is now ticking up in both communities. Essentially, it is per capita higher in Black American communities than white American communities. But if you compared both groups to where they were like in 1950, 73 years ago, they're significantly higher in both cases. Which is then started a discussion, which, the thing you brought up at the beginning, it's started a discussion in some circles about negative outcomes, especially negative outcomes for young men. And that it doesn't seem to affect girls and women nearly as much in their trajectories in life. Men seem to really not do well when they're growing up in single parent environments, and especially if they have no positive male role models.
Yeah, big fact.
So it's and it just probably in the last couple of years I've heard people starting to talk about this more as a major social problem. And there are reasons we can get into that about, like, entrenched racism in the U.S., where it's like, oh, if the problem's happening in the Black American community, like, fewer people are going to talk about it, and but then if it's happening to white people, like, now we are going to talk about it. So it is complicated. And again, I try to take a neutral stance on this stuff. I don't want to just start going in like some crazy direction, but just from
because it's not a blanket. It's not blanket. You can rest in all cases. There's so many
exactly
that play a role in.
Yeah. So it seems that that's the case, again, regardless of the population, that these trends seem to be happening, again, with like kids growing up and how they, and how they kind of turn out. So, the fact that that's something you're working on that's great. Do you find that there is, like, being in Barbados, a good sense of community with people, like a strong sense of, we are people from this island and we don't all know each other individually, but we kind of, like, there's a community sense, versus in, like, a lot of big American cities, there kind of is no sense of community?
I'm going to start with the parish that I grew up in. Remember I spoke about growing up with my aunt and uncle? That would have been Philip. So I'll start defining St. Philip and then come out to the wider Barbados. In St. Philip is the largest parish in Barbados. It's the parish closest to the easterly side of Barbados too. And in my time, it would have been probably the third or fourth most populated of the other parishes, because there were a lot of cane grounds, but not a lot of residents. And St. Philip was it still is, but before it was very close knit and it was very safe. I remember going outside with Janine, like after sunset, and we were running around in our underwear, and we're underage, we're underage.
Sure.
And we're in the cane grounds, and we are safe. Through the years, St. Philip started to develop less cane grounds, less fruit trees, more houses, and then people started to come to St. Philip, either the returning nationals or those who were leaving the what do you call those? The extended families in the St. Michael areas, right? Leave the extended family in St. Michael area and then start their own family in St. Philip. And we call them Camilles.
Because
they came here, right?
They're coming here, yeah.
They're not from St. Philip. They came here, Camilles, right? And then they had that little tension between Philippines and the Camilles. And throughout the years, Philippines started to act less Philippine because there were so many Camilles. It was like, I don't know this guy next to me. I don't know this other person who's come. And in my time as Paris ambassador in 2015, we do something called walkthroughs. We walk through the neighborhood, we introduce ourselves, and we have conversations with the residents. And there were, I would say, probably 3 out of 10 interactions. You would ask someone, so like, why you live in St. Philip? And they'd be like, oh, because land was cheap. Or I don't care that much about St. Philip. I just come here to build a house. So then you notice the St. Philip pride drop, right? It wasn't the Philippine thing anymore. It was just a place that people live. And, coming up to you, why do Barbados now? there's still some communities that are very active with sports, liming, playing dominoes, playing cards, like the Black Rock Belfield community, for instance. But that's a small group within that community. At one point, that group would have been larger, and you would see numbers come out to watch the sports teams, cricket teams, the football teams. But with the development of technology, everything else is developing too. Violence is still the same, but the tools are different. So before you might get stabbed, you might get a big rock pelt at you. You might get busted. That's what they call it here. Get busted. But no, there's so many guns on the island. So you don't see mobilization of residents as like one time. People just prefer to keep, just to keep on their own. You will hear it takes a village to raise a child. That was that was evident at one point. Nowadays, people are afraid to speak to people's children, not because the child may do something, but because the parent may, and you don't know whose toes you might step on, who may offend, and you don't know who has a gun. Now, we don't make softwares here in Barbados. We don't make microwaves. We don't manufacture these electronics. Like we have to import these electronics. So I know for a fact that we do not make guns in Barbados. So there's speculation about how the guns are getting into Barbados. And usually on a small island, speculation is news and speculation is facts on a small island. And there seems to be nothing changing about it. It's actually getting worse. You are seeing guys 15, 16-year-old that can hardly do 5 push-ups is so much. Some of them can't spell their names or create a nice structured sentence, but they have guns. I know for a fact they can't afford guns, but they have guns. So that has dampened the overall community spirit. As Caribbean people, as Barbadian people, the community spirit is still in here, right? We are still very proud to be Barbadian, but then the fear factor is, I don't want to say it's consuming us or it's taking over, but it can't be ignored. It can't be ignored.
Is this now like at the point where there you hear in the like in the government and ministers they're talking about it, because a lot of these problems, right, they'll exist and you and your community members it's a problem, right, but you still won't. I'm thinking about a little side tangent, but like opiates in the US, like really really bad drug addiction in the US, right, like that was a thing that people would know about in a town but people wouldn't talk about it in power. And then it took years and years and years of people's lives being destroyed, families falling apart, all of that, for people to finally say, "Oh yeah, this is actually a problem. We should probably do something about it." And is your sense with gun violence and crime in Barbados that it's still at that level of everybody knows this is getting worse, but people in the government aren't talking about it, or is it now finally becoming something that like you are hearing about in public and people are saying we got to figure out where these guns are coming from. We have to figure out why are these things getting worse.
Politicians are politicians.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
true. Yeah, that's true. They're kind of the same. They're kind of the same everywhere, aren't they? Yeah.
I am one that I am of the firm belief that the people the general society dictates what political game can work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm still of
Yep.
that
That's
belief.
fair.
We can dictate what political game works. But the political game here is that, if it's a sensitive topic, you have to talk about it. So they do talk about it, they do mention it. You will see a couple gun busts here and there, but a couple drug busts too. You see in papers, a whole bunch of guns on the table, a whole bunch of weed, drugs, whatever on the table. Then 2 years down the line, you're seeing more guns on the streets. There are more drugs on the streets too. So they talk their game, but there's never been a point that anyone has actually seen like real action being taken place. No one's ever seen like a kingpin. That's a kingpin being taken down, like a real cog in the wheel being taken down or being questioned or judged. It's only the regular guys like me who obviously don't run the show that you will see being held liable for guns or being held liable for drugs. So they taught the game, but there's no real action toward it.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation, and I haven't spent enough time thinking about, I mean, I've never been in law enforcement, and like, how do you deal with this if it's in your society, and how, if, let's say, in terms of how things have changed, like 20 years ago, would you say this was not an issue, or as you said, like there would still be issues with people getting, you might get stabbed, or as you said, like someone throws a rock at you, but that's not at the same level, and like if this was, I don't know, the 1990s.
Yeah, I believe like there's nothing new under the sun. All that really changes are devices, and so no, the devices are guns, and whereas before you could stab someone, yeah, you could have a fatal stab wound, but that wouldn't have occurred a lot. You could hit somebody in the head and they could die, but that wouldn't happen a lot. And you can make up tomorrow. You have contention with someone today. You get it off your chest. You're angry, and tomorrow you're best of friends. You can't do that with guns. With guns, you shoot someone. That's it. So the devices have changed, and until we have a grasp and a control of it, um, I can definitely say things will continue to get worse.
To get worse. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Are there other topics, both either heavier topics or light topics, that I haven't touched on that you'd really like to talk about?
We talk about music, but if you mention music in Barbados, you have to talk about the way we dance. We call it a
Yeah. Okay.
walk up, like
Okay. Okay.
walking up or gyrating your waistline. The other islands, like I think we're the only island that really walk ups.
Okay.
The other islands, they whine. They call it like a nice whine, side to side
And
whine.
what? Okay.
If you go in a fete anywhere in the world and you see someone walking up, like it's a Barbadian, and I can tell you that because I went to St. Vincent during their crop over, not their crop over, sorry, during their festive season, their carnival time. And I was in the fat, I was in the back, and I myself, I was like, oh, let me go walk up on like some of these Vincentian ladies that are in here in the fat. And I went, I was doing my thing, doing walk up, and they were about it. They were like, you know, some would be like, yeah, they would dance a little bit, but they don't walk up like Barbadians. So I stood myself, enjoy my beverage, and I spot in the distance this gentleman giving a proper Bajan whack up. I mean, this man is doing the dog. This man is doing the puppy. All right, and I knew it as soon as I saw him. I was like, "That is a Barbadian." So I went over. I was like, "You're a Bajan." He was like, "Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes."
He's like,
He
yeah,
started
I
laughing.
am.
So like, walking up is definitely something that we have mastered, and I'm pretty sure many of us are very proud of.
So, and that's how you know it's a Bayesian if they're doing a walk up at the club, and you're like, yep,
Everyone
that's
walking, yeah.
he's from the island. Yeah. Actually, oh, that's actually a question I had, which is you talked about all the way back to the beginning. You mentioned when you were in New York, everyone thought you were Jamaican because of your accent, and you said that's ridiculous. We all have completely different accents. Could you talk a little bit about the different accents, and even if you've got different like terms, vocab? Again, I know it's tough to someone's like, oh, I'm going to do an accent, but just in terms of how the language sounds.
Mhm. Okay, well, I don't like to mimic accents, right?
Yeah,
Because
okay, we can skip that. Yeah, that's okay.
yeah, I mean, some people can take offense to that, but a very popular one is oh yeah. So I'm just gonna say in a Barbadian accent. You don't have to
Yeah,
actually
that's
yeah.
fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so Trinidadians say oh yeah, which is like all of you, oh yeah. We say wanna,
Wanna?
Yeah, like wanna. Like instead of all of you or y'all, you say wanna. There's one that Barbadian dialect. It still makes me laugh, even though it's my dialect. I think it's the most hilarious dialect. If I watch material or content and it's done in Barbadian dialect, I have I catch a fit. It's hilarious. So like if I say I can, like if I'm able to do something for you, we you won't really hear I can do it for you. We would more refer to like could. But then we have a shortened form of could. We don't say I could, we say I could. So if you're asking me to do this podcast with you, Darren, can you do this podcast with me? Yeah, I could do that for you. Like I could do that. If I can't do it, then I would say I can.
You're saying can't, but you're sort of like, I can. Yeah.
I can't do that for you. I can't. I just can't do it. So we kind of interchange can and could, right? So could is can and I'm able to, and can means I can't. I just can't do it. Yeah. And then of course each island, we have our provocative terms, but I don't like to use that because I don't think that really defines our dialect. you know?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it would be remiss of me to not mention at least one from Barbadian culture. And
Go for
it's
it.
one that it comes automatic. We call it it's like a Bajan choir sometimes. If you go somewhere and something tragic happens or something really shocking happens, you hear it just comes out. You don't even have to think about it. You hear ora soul. It just comes out. And it's not that you mean bad with it or you're aggressive with it. It's just like so reactive from our culture, like I guess habit probably, learned behavior. Uh, that's definitely very Barbadian.
If you could say it again, what's the phrase again?
It's about how you say it, right? It's not just like the word,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's about how you say it. So like if you say it like how I said, there's no ora soul. That's like like I'm really concerned for like what's going on right now. Like then you can say it more aggressively, but it's Rashole. So I guess overseas we more like asshole. You hear asshole a lot.
Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm.
Put an R in
Yeah.
front of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's always a term like that people just like they just throw out. Yeah.
you saw like my neighbor just know like that was spot on Barbadian. Just that was a well done job, Chris.
What's the plural again? You said for Barbados, it's all of you.
Oh, wanna.
One, right. It's just like, yeah, in the American South where you've got y'all, meaning all of you, and it's because there's no plural you in English. That's just like a word. It
Yeah,
doesn't it doesn't exist. Like tons of languages will have a word for that. English doesn't have one. And so all these different places where people speak English, they've come up with like different local ways of saying all of you people with just like a single word. And it's something where it'll be really, really different depending on wherever you are, where people speak the
yeah,
language.
yeah. Big facts. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's we covered a lot of ground here. Really enjoyed talking to you. Where can if you want to do social media plug, like where can people find you, find your work? Are you online with anything that people can check out before we sign off?
Oh well, I'm on Fiverr, so you can check me on Fiverr. I'm also on Upwork, and my Instagram is Darren Reno Watson at Darren Reno Watson, my full name.
Okay, perfect. And we'll put all the links down below so people can find where you are. Well, Darren, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I've learned a tremendous amount about Barbados, and I wish you all the best. And thanks everyone for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on podcasts, remember if you haven't subscribed, please do so. We can continue to make more interviews, and you can learn all these different things about different parts of the world that maybe you've never been to, but you've always wondered, like, what is it like being on the island of Barbados? And now we have so much of a better idea because of that. So thank you so much, Darren. And thank you all for listening and watching. See you next time.